first start by welcoming you to the Fireside chat on green hydrogen opportunity. This is part of the South African Pavilion as part of the Dubai Expo. South Africa has seen an unprecedented opportunity to capitalize on the rapidly developing hydrogen economy globally. As the world becomes more reliant on renewables as a primary source of energy, hydrogen offers unparalleled solutions for the transport, storage, and efficient utilization of clean energy. South Africa has world-class renewable potential that can be leveraged to supply clean energy to the world and transform the domestic economy. South Africa's strategic advantage to produce green hydrogen is based on the following three elements: superior renewable energy endowment for both onshore wind and solar, the largest concentration of PGMs or platinum group metals in the world, a deep expertise for Fischer-Tropsch processes that can be used to produce power fuels, and also the production distribution opportunities for green hydrogen exist in many areas. In industry, the conversion of existing industries to grids and the use of green hydrogen as a power source, particularly in sectors that will face a drop-off in export demand if they don't go green by 2030, is really critical. And then also, I think if you look at the South African economy, it's based on mining. So we see mining growing into the future. So our hydrogen economy will also contribute to a slight increase in PGM metal mining, but also in terms of decarbonizing the logistics value chain for minerals in the energy economy. And then last but not least, I think while we're expecting to have some domestic demand for hydrogen, we're expecting that the lion's share of the hydrogen produced will go towards export. So today I'm here with two other colleagues from the private sector and one of our parastatals in charge of hydrogen economy. So my name is Dr. Rebecca Maserumule. I'm the Chief Director of Hydrogen Energy at the Department of Science and Innovation. And reason why we're here as the Department of Science and Innovation is in 2007, Cabinet approved a National Hydrogen Research, Development, and Innovation Strategy that we've been implementing for the last 13 years. And we actually are at a tipping point in our process to move from, I would say, research, development, innovation into commercialization and manufacturing. And just a few months ago, we started a process to develop a hydrogen society roadmap, looking at the opportunities of having a hydrogen fuel cell technologies as well as green hydrogen to decarbonize South Africa and move towards a net zero economy. As South Africa, we know research and innovation is critical to the future, especially as we bring the costs down. But also we understand that it's really critical that we take this journey together as government with private sector and parastatals. So I want to introduce two participants here today. Again, Mr. Reginald Demana he's an executive for mining, metals, and infrastructure at the Industrial Development Corporation, and Mr. Dumisane Nkala from Sasol. He's the Vice President of Business Development and Energy Business at Sasol. So welcome today. So before we go any further, I've introduced myself and why DSI is interested, or Department of Science and Innovation is interested in hydrogen economy. So Reginald, I want you to start out by introducing yourself, who you are, and why your organization has an interest in the global hydrogen economy.
Yeah, good afternoon, Rebecca and Dumisane. It's really great to be part of this panel and talking about green hydrogen. My name is Reginald Demana. I'm one of the operational executives here. I look after a portfolio that's made up of mining and metals, infrastructure, as well as energy. And you will see why that is relevant in a moment. Now, starting with the Industrial Development Corporation of South Africa, or the IDC. This organization is a development finance institution established through an act of parliament back in 1940. So it makes the IDC really quite an old institution. And its primary mandate, established through legislation, is driving industrial development in the country, including the rest of Africa. So our mandate is both a South African mandate as well as continental Africa mandate. We pursue industrial development through a number of priority sectors. 3 of those sectors are under my direct responsibility. So it's mining and metals beneficiation. There's also infrastructure, and in infrastructure, we're talking really about the broad spectrum of infrastructure that supports industrial growth. So you're talking about water, ports, rail, you're talking about energy infrastructure, storage, warehousing. Within infrastructure, we also cover the telecoms, so the whole spectrum of data, towers, and so on and so forth. I'm also responsible for another priority area, which is energy. In the main of late, we look at renewable energy. So within the public IPP space, as well as in the private sector, commercial and private sector, which is driven by the power purchase agreements. We also have other priority sectors in manufacturing, so that will include manufacturing of various aspects, and hopefully in future, including the green hydrogen value chain. Lastly, but not really the least within that, we also look at areas such as agriculture and agro-processing, including different services. So that gives you a view of what the IDC does broadly. The type of products we offer to the market will be debt, equity, guarantees, project finance, as well as trade finance. Our model of operating is through partnerships with private sector, as well as sister state-owned companies in South Africa, as well as internationally. So partnerships is key. We work with both domestic and global partners in pursuing the mandate of industrial development. Why are we interested in this session and in hydrogen is that the IDC has been tasked by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, who is our shareholder representative as the IDC, to develop the hydrogen commercialization strategy. We have submitted the first draft of that strategy to the Minister. And really within that, as the lead organization in executing that, we are looking at 4 or 5 areas. Export markets. How do we get a share of the global green hydrogen export market? Secondly, we're looking at investment and finance. How do we attract global partners, including other governments, in the development of what is still relatively early stage development and high risk investment? So as a DFI, we de-risk industries current and future for participation of the private sector. Part of that, of course, is that we need to look at activities that drive employment creation in South Africa. Therefore, manufacturing provides an avenue. So how do we support green hydrogen with local manufacturing, with local supply chain development? So that's one area we are looking at. Overall, we're also seeing how in the future hydrogen can help companies, especially companies that produce export-oriented products such as mining, to decarbonize. And so that's something we're looking at. And lastly, I think it's an issue of just transition. We think that in all the conversations that we have, we must bear in mind the role of just transition, so that this green hydrogen economy talks to broad participation, talks to community inclusion, talks to skills, as well as job creation in the country. So that's our interest as the IDC. Thank you.
No, thank you. And Dumisane, Sasol is currently is a big player in the global hydrogen space. Introduce yourself, introduce Sasol, and why does your organization have an interest in a global hydrogen economy?
Thank you, Rebecca, for the opportunity, and good afternoon to the listeners. We at Sasol, let me start with introducing myself. I'm Dumisane Nkala. I'm the Vice President for Business Development in the energy space. within the Sasol business portfolio. I'm responsible primarily looking at development of green hydrogen from production side as well as the application side for the hydrogen. So we're looking from a Sasol perspective, we're looking at end-to-end in terms of the hydrogen economy development. So we're looking at really creating new value pools, whether it's for ourselves as Sasol or it's for the South African economy. And it talks to some of the discussion around the just transition. So I'm responsible for the business development within the Sasol business. And then to introduce Sasol, Sasol is an integrated oil and gas company. As well as a chemical manufacturer and distributor and marketer. We're headquartered in South Africa, but we listed both in Johannesburg Stock Exchange as well as the New York Stock Exchange. We have operations primarily in South Africa, but as well as in North America, in Europe, as well as Asia. Our primary interest in hydrogen comes really from the South African perspective. Sasol was formed 70 years ago to convert coal into liquid chemicals and fuel. And the primal focus in this process is really getting hydrogen and carbon dioxide to then combine that and synthesize into different chemicals as well as synthetic fuels. So that's the primary processes within the Sasol. So that highlights why hydrogen is so important to us. It has been part of the Sasol since its inception, and it continues to be a key part of our value chain. But what makes it challenging for Sasol is that in order to produce this hydrogen, we have to do a significant emission of carbon dioxide, because the coal as well as the gas that we use to produce green hydrogen, to produce hydrogen, which is gray hydrogen, is very inefficient in terms of the amount of hydrogen that you get. So for one kg of hydrogen that you produce, you emit a significant amount of carbon dioxide in that process. So we have committed as an organization that we want to reduce our emissions by 30% by 2030, and then getting to net zero by 2050 in terms of our emissions, particularly from the South African facilities. So that means we have to find an alternative source of hydrogen primarily, but also a sustainable source of carbon dioxide. So in this process, as an organization, we are currently producing and consuming internal as well as distributing in South Africa about 2.5 million tons of hydrogen per year. That makes us one of the biggest producers and distributors of gray hydrogen. And therefore, we need to find alternative source of this green hydrogen if we're to completely decarbonize. But in our business model currently, we own and operate mining facilities which supply our operations with coal. We also have gas interest coming out of Mozambique, which also supply us with gas for our facilities. And we have made a commitment that we will reduce our investments in coal mining, and we see gas as offering us a transition fuel until we get the hydrogen cost of green hydrogen to the levels where it can be sustainable, utilized within the facilities. I think it's part of the discussion, hopefully, that we will have around what will that take to get the hydrogen to the point where we can utilize within the Sasol operation. So from a Sasol side, from our own facilities, we need a significant amount of hydrogen to decarbonize ourselves. But in addition to ourselves, we as a major energy supplier within, particularly the liquid energy supplier within the South African environment, we also have customers that are looking to decarbonize. We have mining companies, customers that are looking for alternative low carbon fuel, and to decarbonize their own facilities. We have customers that are in steel industry that are looking for grey hydrogen that are currently using, green hydrogen that are currently using our grey hydrogen. We also have customers that are in mobility, that are our customers that are looking for alternative source of low carbon fuel. So we are, in addition to our own facility, working with both with DTIC as well as IDC to see how we can also to stimulate that part of the market and get the demand side from a South African decarbonization drive going. And that is a key part of our strategy as Sasol to work with the different partners to develop the demand side. But from the supply side, in addition to our own producing it for our own facility, we also, as it had been referenced earlier, we see this as a significant opportunity for South Africa to build a significant export play for green hydrogen. As a country, we have one of the best endowment when it comes to renewables. That makes us one of the ideal locations for green hydrogen production at competitive cost. So we believe we should, as a country, take advantage of this, and it will be part of what will make us achieve our objective of a just transition by creating alternative sources of employment, but also alternative economies for South Africa. So we committed as an organization to working with our partners, including the government, in developing this industry, the green hydrogen industry. As an organization, if you look at the facilities that we have, the technical capabilities that we have already in that space of hydrogen, and be it grey hydrogen. So we have the FT technology that we referred to, that we believe will be key to the decarbonization of particularly aviation by producing synthetic sustainable aviation fuel. And Sasol, we recently launched an organization that will be primarily focused in producing sustainable aviation fuel, our EcoFT organization, that will be looking for opportunities to work with partners in developing this industry. But we believe as South Africa, we are in that position where we could, at the back of our FT technology, as well as the back of the South African industry, we could make South Africa one of the hubs for sustainable aviation fuel production for international markets as well. So we have the assets, we have the technology, and we have the resource, and we believe that together with South Africa, with South Africans, we can make it, we can turn this resource into a significant benefit for the country.
Okay, thank you so much, Dumisane. So the three speakers have, myself, Dumisane, and Reginald, we've said South Africa has the skills, we have the resources, raw materials, be it solar, be it wind, be it even minerals, and we have the will. And the question is, the sector is growing quickly. Maybe 15 years ago, there was this hype around hydrogen, but now that hype has come back and people are really moving forward in that hype. You had internationally, you have the hydrogen, hydrogen association around industry where you didn't have it 15 years ago. You have many strategies of different countries talking about the importation of hydrogen being a key part of their decarbonization. So what does South Africa have to do to kickstart our hydrogen economy and be really serious about it and really participate in the global green hydrogen economy? So we have everything we need, but we need to really get on the ground, get running. What must we do? So I'm gonna start with Dumisane because private sector is supposed to be faster than all the rest of us, and then going to IDC, and then I'll finish up responding to that question. So Dumisane, floor to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. As you can imagine, as a private sector, we have a laundry list of what we think should be done to stimulate this industry. So I'll restrict my response to a very few specific actions that we believe are necessary for us as South Africa to move with speed and take advantage of this opportunity. So we'll be primarily focusing on what will it take for us to launch ourselves as quickly as possible into this hydrogen economy. What is fundamental in our views, and I think you have also highlighted that, is the collaboration. And whatever we can talk about is going to be about how do you form a collaborative hydrogen ecosystem within the South Africa. That is going to be fundamental in terms of actually coalescing the industries and as well as the government to make sure that we develop a comprehensive hydrogen strategy for the country that can be used to coordinate and attract international investors, but also to help us to scale up and de-risk the opportunity. So that hydrogen strategy and hydrogen master plan that the country can coalesce behind, and also can be a reference document for the investors is going to be quite important. And we have as a country started that road. We're working together with the partners with different stakeholders in terms of development of that. And the South African government have started, as you referred to earlier, Rebecca, we've done a number of documents that we believe gives us a nice roadmap to start building this hydrogen economy. So that's one thing. And then the other one is really, which affects both ourselves, but also in international space, is around the regulations and policies. I think hydrogen, particularly the green hydrogen that we're looking at, is a new economy. So there's a lot of going to be a lot of regulations that needs to be put in place, whether it's the direct hydrogen applications or the new economies or industry that will have to develop at the back of that hydrogen economy, whether you're talking hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, or you're talking about hydrogen as a backup power. All those policies and regulations will have to be developed so that we can apply hydrogen as safe as we can, as possible. And then the other part that I just want to touch on is around the funding. And then the funding, the hydrogen, particularly the early development of hydrogen, is going to be a heavy lift as we go down the learning curves and the hydrogen costs start coming down. In order for us to be able to take make the early moves in the hydrogen economy development, we will need to access to relatively cheaper funding, but also the grant funding and to help us to particularly for the catalytic projects that the country is looking at to develop, and that is going to be quite an important part to get the hydrogen economy going. And then the other area is around, particularly when we talk about the green hydrogen exports, is all around going to be the offtake. Though the intergovernmental cooperation to create those new markets for South Africa, those new trade routes for South Africa, also is going to be quite an important part for us to get access to the new markets, whether it's in Europe or it's in the Far East, where we believe that there's going to be quite a significant demand for green hydrogen. So those are some of the key elements in my mind that I think, in order for us as a country to move with speed to execute and take advantage of the green hydrogen, we will have to start considering.
And Reginald, your thoughts from the IDC lens or view as to what we need to do as a country to kickstart the hydrogen economy domestically, but also to get into the game around the export of green hydrogen and its derivatives like ammonia, green steel, and so forth.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe the best place for me to start would be that the Minister of Department of Trade, Industry and Competition established the South African Green Hydrogen Panel in June. And that panel was tasked with developing the commercialization strategy. A number of parties are part of that panel, including public, private, and civil society, and various academic institutions as well. The IDC has been chosen as the army of state to really lead the development of that strategy, as well as roadmap. And the first draft has been submitted. And I think that really just shows the seriousness of the South African government in having a coordinated approach towards development and commercialization of hydrogen. Now, what are some of the key focus areas that have been addressed in the roadmap? it really, I can talk to 4 specific areas. One is enablers. The enablers we see mainly around skills development. Where do we have the skills to drive this new economy within the private sector, within the research institutions, partners such as Sasol, for example, Anglo-American driving a number of projects themselves, CSIR, which is our own research institution in South Africa. It also talks around developing an enabling policy and regulatory framework. What are the things that we need to do to bring together an environment that allows for smooth development? We know that one of the things projects like this require is environmental authorizations and permits. Water use authorizations that would be required. A number of these pieces of legislation and policy environments exist. It's really about bringing them together into something that facilitates faster development. So all of that is underway. As a development finance institution, one of the key tasks we have to do within our skill sets is financing. We already talking to other entities such as Development Bank of South Africa, Southern Africa, other agencies such as KfW in Germany, as well as the government itself directly. How do we provide various incentives and grants and concessional funding to enable the development of various early stage projects? So it's the enablers that we talk about, which is already underway. The second bucket of areas is capabilities. What capabilities do we need? We have identified Sasol, the Fischer-Tropsch technology, as a key partner, homegrown technology that are there. So hence, we as the IDC, in line with this directive of looking at capabilities, have entered into a memorandum of cooperation with Sasol to look at how best we can maximize that technology to develop green hydrogen. We're also looking at manufacturing. How do we support manufacturing activities in South Africa for these areas? There's also raw materials. This is where the PGMs that we mine in South Africa can be used to develop fuel cells as well as electrolyzers. A few parties are already in early stage development that we fund as the IDC, and we really welcome international parties that have various solutions and proposals that can be used to drive manufacturing as well as technology development. The third area that we look at is really around the strategy, and I think Sasol indicated export markets. How do we access and develop export market channels? One of those things for us to allow exports is to develop the port in the Northern Cape, that Bukebai port. Again, Sasol has been chosen as the execution partner for feasibility studies there, because we realize Northern Cape, the endowment of onshore wind as well as solar resources, the sparsely populated land, as well as the port, close proximity to the markets. It means it is probably one of the top 5 locations within which to develop hydrogen for export. And working with a partner like Sasol, it means we can bring those projects into reality much faster. And I think the other element is other projects that we have identified. I think Sasol mentioned aviation. There's also talk around maritime that we're looking at. There's Anglo that has already started with its projects, mine tracking. They will be looking at other long-haul tracking and buses. We've looked at Imperial, for example, announced initiatives that they will be developing long-haul or distance trucks that might use this sort of technology, and many other projects. But lastly, renewable energy plays an important role in green hydrogen. Of course, as the IDC, we fund a lot of renewable energy projects, both as IPP as well as private sector. we have quite a lot of appetite. We indicated that in the short to medium term, where we're willing to deploy about 8 billion rand within that space, in order, as we got more renewable energy projects into the grid, more of that can also go towards a hydrogen, towards the Sasols of this world, to convert gray hydrogen into green hydrogen. And in the Northern Cape in particular, we can invest in more such projects to enable the development of export green hydrogen. So a lot of work is underway. We are leading it as a DTIC, as a IDC in partnership with other organs of state. And we're talking to the likes of KfW in Germany, we're talking to CSIR in how we can pull in other funds and grant funding in order to accelerate funding solutions for this. Thanks.
No, thank you, Reginald. Thank you, Dumisane. As a Department of Science and Innovation, I'll weigh in on that question. What do we have to do to kickstart the hydrogen economy in South Africa? So the Department of Science and Innovation around 12 months ago started a process to develop a hydrogen society roadmap, because as you make a transition, it's important that the issue of inclusivity is at the center of what you do. So our program, or our roadmap, actually talks to issues of gender equality and social inclusion, ensuring that youth are, especially those who are underprivileged, are at the center of the change through training programs along the whole value chain, from technical, vocational, educational training centers all the way through to masters and PhDs. But also we wanted to ensure that big players like your global OEMs, like your Sasols, as well as SMEs, have a space and a voice around how the change should occur so they can also benefit. And I think in terms of the work that we've been doing, we had extensive stakeholder engagement process, close to 100 stakeholders through interviews, workshops, collaboration workshops, where we actually got the views of the people on the ground. And really, we wanted to get a consensus view as to how as a country we should move forward to make sure that everyone's going to benefit from this new opportunity for South Africa. I think we coalesced that, of course, decarbonization of industry, especially heavy industry, was a critical, not just because of what's going on in South Africa, but what's going on globally. If you look at the cross-border adjustment mechanisms and carbon leakage policies, really we need to move our private sector through to green hydrogen or green ammonia as fast as possible for their chemical processes. And possibly, but we know that there's subsidies on fossil fuels as well as the issues around cost. So I think research, development, innovation will be critical to bring the cost of green hydrogen down. But in the interim, while the cost is not at parity with gray hydrogen, I believe that subsidies are required, of grant funding, so that early adopters aren't going to be penalized for taking that brave step forward. And I think this will be critical. You'll see the benefits in the short and long term, because if you reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, you also improve air quality locally in South Africa, but at the same time, give companies like Sasol and other companies access to new markets, export markets of greener products. Second is decarbonization of transport. The majority of our population takes public transport. So decarbonizing our transport, giving more effective ways to allow our citizens to transport themselves around the country will be critical, but also even in terms of the goods that we move in cleaning our logistics will again improve your air quality. And last but not least, I think around issues around enhanced power system. Right now we're grappling with issues of power outages and using fuel cells as backup, be it for data centers, be it for public buildings, to ensure that service delivery will not be interrupted by power outages is a critical component of ensuring that we have a capable state. And I think really I've spoken to the cross cutters, which is really around, gender equality and social inclusion, and making sure that as we move into this new sector, that we're going to have women involved. And I'm excited to say that the Bugabai project has Meta Mahari. She's a Black woman, South African, and she's at the front and center of this process. So I'm actually happy to see that there are women who are leading in the sector, but also I think that we can't leave behind the youth, because we have the youth bulge in South Africa, and it's critical. And I think we won't see the dividends paying back until many years later, but we understand that if you make sure the youth bulge, it can be either a curse or it can be a great opportunity for economic growth. We can make it happen. So I think right now we also need to ensure our stakeholder engagements and our community engagement is strengthened so that the communities who are at the, I would say, coalface of the change are actively involved in where the future we are going for South Africa. So I think I want to, now we've spoken about internally what we're doing in South Africa. And also we've talked about, what government can do to some extent. But I think, remember, this is Dubai Expo. So I think this issue of internationalization. So what partnerships do we need? So you've kind of gone into some detail. I think, Reginald, you've spoken about KfW. I think, Dumisane, you've spoken also around international partnerships. I think you'll correct me here, Dumisane, Sasol has joined the Hydrogen Council, so congratulations on that. But in terms of the international partnerships, what do we really need to do? And I think really this issue of cost is a big issue that no one country will solve by itself. The issue around innovation, I think, Reginald, you spoke to a bit. Again, it will not be solved all by ourselves. So I think let's drill in a bit, let's unpack a bit more around the international partnerships and what do you think needs to happen? So I'm going to weigh in, ladies first, around what I think, and I'm going to, of course, go to my favorite topic of interest is always innovation. And I think that, South Africa has existing partnerships. We are a member of the Clean Energy Ministerial. We're a partner country into the International Energy Agency through the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. And there's many opportunity, many forums that we sit on, IPHE, and so forth. And I really believe that even if we're going to look at enabling policies, those forums are going to be critical to ensure that we take the lessons from other countries that have been on this journey a bit longer than us, and then maybe adopt those policies that make sense for South Africa. You think about the Clean Energy Ministerial and Mission Innovation. They have great information around hydrogen valleys. I think information around the hydrogen valleys that we learned under Mission Innovation really helped South Africa to shape its voice around the hydrogen valley that we're doing. It's starting at the Nkala mine in Limpopo province, moving through to Gauteng, looking at industrial clusters in the Johannesburg area, and then traveling along the N3 into Durban, and stopping almost at the sea in terms of, scaling up green hydrogen consumption, production, along that. I think the corridor is about 800 kilometers, I believe. So I think this information was learned internationally, looking at best practice. So in the RDI space, or research development innovation space, partnerships are everything. And it's critical to making sure that we can bring costs down and make sure that our green hydrogen is at parity with gray. So that's just from my perspective. From your perspective, Reginald, I'm going back to you first because Dumisane got first choice last time. What do you think, could you maybe drill and unpack the issue around international partnerships? And as from an IDC point of view, what do you think needs to happen? And I think when you're talking internationally, could you also give a bit of perspective around Africa? Because I think the African continent is a really important part of this journey as well. So Reginald, floor to you.
Yeah, thanks. I think partnerships are key. And I think for the IDC, I've already mentioned that we execute our mandate through partnerships, mainly with the private sector. We collaborate with other international DFIs, whether it's in the continent or in the rest of the world, mainly from a funding perspective. So we get a number of highly concessional funding lines from our sister DFIs globally, which enable us to meet our mandate of developing industries, new economies, as well as creating jobs in general. Now, the requirement for the development of hydrogen here can run into $1 to $3 billion that will be required in the sort of short term. within the fiscal space of South Africa, we probably will not have the necessary means to provide all the funding that we need. So as a result, very important for us, and I'm now saying this as a financier, is that we need to be able to pull in other funding resources. So in a similar way that we have gone to COP26, trying to mobilize funding for climate financing as well as just transitioning, we are also trying to see how much of that funding can go into green hydrogen, in addition to simply looking at, closing out coal much faster or phasing out coal much faster, as well as new energy vehicles. But how much of that funding can also get into green hydrogen? So that's something that as IDC we focus on, trying to get financing into these areas. The second area for us is that, in order to attract international investors and funders, we need to show that domestically we are supporting high risk, early stage development of projects. We must prepare the projects and get them ready to receive external capital. And I think that's where we can add the most value, is that presenting a number of opportunities that are at bankable feasibility stage that can be marketed internationally in different international roadshows. That's something that we want to do with the likes of DPSA, with the likes of International Infrastructure South Africa in the presidency, packaging projects that are ready to receive private sector funding, both domestically and internationally. The other area that we're really looking at, in terms of these global partnerships, is of course export markets. Some of these export markets require government-to-government engagements. Still early stage. It might be that other governments are providing a lot of incentives for their companies to develop hydrogen, whether on the demand side, on the supply side. We need to try to see the best lessons that are there, and we need to see how we can use some of those lessons to develop our own industry and policy environment. I think the other area is with regards to Africa and regional development and cooperation. We know that we're talking about this African continental free trade space. And as part of that, one of the things is developing export markets. We must make sure that it covers the hydrogen economy, the green hydrogen economy. And I think as South Africa, we have the skills, the capability, the manufacturing base, we have the financing in order to roll green hydrogen into other countries in SADC as well as in sub-Saharan Africa. So I think it starts here. We can package these projects, develop them, and then roll these projects that are already proven into the rest of the continent, especially in support of the after agreements after that. But I think most importantly, as a financier, where we see a lot of value is investors are crying for readily and for projects that are bankable, that are well packaged and presented for them to come in. And this is high risk investment. We can play in that space, we can develop these projects and package them. And other than that is really facilitating export markets with government-to-government interactions to make sure that some of our companies are competitive when they go out to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Dumisane, would you like to weigh in?
Thank you, Rebecca and Reginald. I think you have both covered some of the key elements around the international cooperation very well, which are at the top of mind, particularly around the innovation and the funding that is key to get this industry, the green hydrogen industry, off off the ground. But what I would like to add are two specific areas that I think we also need to build international collaboration, and this is around actual project development. It's a new industry across the globe, and there's going to be a lot of learning as projects get developed. And I think even in whether it's a local developed project, bringing international partners in those projects for collaboration to share learnings and skills is going to be quite important on that type of collaboration. We, from a Sasol side, we're doing that with our sustainable aviation fuel, where we're bringing both local partners and international partners. We're looking at producing sustainable aviation fuel at our Secunda operation in South Africa. And we have Linda as well as Enatrek, which are international companies, as well as the local company Navitas as part of that project. So that is, if you look at that, each one of those parties to the project bring different skill sets with different experiences in terms of the hydrogen value chain. So that collaboration across the project, the hydrogen value chain is going to be critical. Same applies with the projects that we're doing in terms of producing green hydrogen in our Sasol operation. We also looking to bring both on the demand side, but also on the production side. We're bringing in both local partners as well as international partners, again, to share the learnings and share to allow us to de-risk the project significantly. So that collaboration around specific projects is going to be important. And we think we're going to see similar work around the Bohobai and other greenfields opportunities. We're already in conversation around the opening up the channel to Europe with Port of Rotterdam that have already signed an MOA with Northern Cape Development Agency around the development of that hydrogen, the port of Bohobai as a hydrogen exporting or green ammonia exporting port. So that collaboration along the value chain is going to be quite important for at an international level, and that's what I think part of the South African Inc. is something that we need to work together to build and bring into our project's development. The other part of the international collaboration, which referred to, is around the offtake, especially when it comes to the green ammonia or green hydrogen and sustainable aviation fuel. Hydrogen is redrawing the energy flows across the world. And as South Africa, our primary export will really around the chemicals and minerals. We now have to open up new trade routes around the energy and green energy space, whether it's green ammonia and later on green hydrogen. That is going to be important to how do we build those international collaboration, because you have international markets that are looking for the projects, for the products, and we have South Africa that will be producing the green hydrogen and green ammonia. So that's going to be quite important, building those collaboration, and which will de-risk the projects and allow us to scale up, to scale these projects fast. The other part of international collaboration is around the regional cooperation. I think we have South Africa has referred quite a number of times around the interest to work with, for instance, Namibia, who have some similar resource in terms of renewable energy as South Africa, and it's also looking to develop green hydrogen economy. So that ability to cooperate across the region, as we have done with power pools, and also we've done that with Mozambique on the gas part. So we've been, as a country, been able to collaborate across the region, and continuing this kind of approach into green hydrogen is going to be quite important, because I mean, I think Reginald did refer to the scale of these opportunities is quite significant, and it will really need a cooperation of different stakeholders across the value chain to come together to make it work. So that cooperation and collaboration across the the region is going to be quite important. But one thing that I also want to emphasize, which you referred to around both Rebecca and Reginald, is around the just transition and the ability to localize some of the key elements of the hydrogen economy, particularly when it comes to manufacturing, whether you're talking fuel cells or you're talking part of the renewable energy equipment. And that, in order to be able to build that kind of infrastructure for my local manufacturing, it will require cooperation with other international players that will have to move their manufacturing into South Africa or into the region. So that international cooperation is going to be quite important. Thank you.
No, thank you, Dumisane. So I believe we've come to the end of our session. So I'm going to give you 1 minute, last thoughts, and then Reginald, you'll also do last thoughts, and then we'll do our photo thing. So Dumisane, last thoughts. What do you want the rest of the world to know about the hydrogen economy in South Africa? Last thoughts.
Thank you again for this conversation. South Africa has one of the best results in terms of renewable energy globally. And we have the industry that has been built over a long number of years that is able to pivot towards green hydrogen. We're one of the countries that have put our very clear objectives around decarbonization, around the net zero. There were in terms of most of our industries, and we have put just transition as a fundamental part of that whole decarbonization for the country. And we believe that is going to be something that for most countries, in particular developing countries that are looking to pivot towards low carbon energy, will be looking to implement the just transition and localization of the hydrogen industry. So as a country, we have the tools, we have the capabilities, and we have the resource endowment that allows us to pivot to green hydrogen. I think what is important again is that we have started on this journey. So we're not waiting for everything to fall into place to then kickstart the economy. There's a lot of catalytic projects. Reginald referred to the report that is being put together by the Green Hydrogen Panel. That Green Hydrogen Panel lists a number of opportunities that the country has already started developing, which are catalytic projects in different spots, both from application side as well as the production side. But also key to this discussion again is the inclusion, building an inclusive hydrogen economy. You have referred to making sure that women are part of the economy, but also bringing in youth, especially as you develop new skills. It's an opportunity for us to increase to tackle our challenges around unemployment, and this gives us that opportunity to reindustrialize as a country, but also to collaborate in a completely different space with the international community. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Dumisane. Reginald, last thoughts?
Yeah, I think my message, in addition to what has been said, is I want to direct this to the international financing community, whether it is fellow DFIs, banks, private equity players, is that if you look at the green hydrogen value chain in South Africa, we really have it all to a large extent. There are lots of investment opportunities. That value chain, you can look at it in 5 different ways. There's platinum, which is really at the primary mining and beneficiation of PGMs. 70–80% of those reserves are located in South Africa. So it's a proven investment space that we have. If you look at manufacturing, already we are a number of companies that have been trialing manufacture of fuel cells, electrolyzers. If you look at the actual production of hydrogen, whether we call it gray hydrogen, the likes of Sasol and Nkala have already been producing hydrogen for a while. So that's also a proven space. So primary production of PGMs, which are ingredients to hydrogen value chain and components, Manufacturing of electrolyzers as well as fuel cells is there. The actual production of hydrogen is already being done. Renewable energy, we already have track record of about 10 years of renewable energy investments in the public sector with very well-run programs and projects that are producing to the projected capacities when they were formulated. And lastly, on the demand side, already we're starting to look at domestic and export demand markets. If we partner well as an international financier, you're really going to get your returns in the different areas of the green hydrogen value chain in South Africa. You're welcomed as the IDC. We're happy to facilitate and connect you with the relevant areas of South African investment opportunities. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Reginald. Thank you, Dumisane. So I would just say in closing, we're basically saying Team South Africa is ready. We have the leadership, so our presidency and infrastructure South Africa are taking the lead as hydrogen is enabler for the implementation of the South African Economic Reconstruction Recovery Plan. We have the capabilities. We've been doing Fisher products for decades. We have the skill set and DFIs in terms of IDC and other development of banks of South Africa. We've been funding the Hydrogen South Africa program for over a decade. So we have the capabilities locally, but also the triple helix relationship is in place. We're working together through initiatives like the Green Hydrogen Panel, as well as Hydrogen Society Roadmap to make sure that we can make this happen. So without further ado, I'd like to say thank you so much to our organizers. A special thank you to the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition for organizing this month of Dubai Expo, for inviting the three of us to come together to have this fireside chat. A special thank you to Annalise and Jardine. They are you don't see them, their faces or voices, but they are here. They made it happen. Jardine has a background in digital economy. So this is why this is a program that has run smoothly, no challenges, no glitches. So like I say, in closing, thank you so much, everyone, for your time, your attention. And we look forward to working with the rest of the world in the hydrogen economy. Take care.
Thank you.